Hello everyone, welcome to BISP trainings.com. My name is Sumit, and in this tutorial I will be going to tell you how to build an expense tracker app using Lightning component. So in this video we'll be going to build one object in our Salesforce, and by using Lightning component app we'll be going to extract the total expenses from that object, and also we'll be going to create a new record into that object. So first of all, let's have a look for that object, that how that object looks like. So as you can see here, I have created one new object named as expenses within sales application. It contains few of the fields. The fields are expense name, amount, client, date, and one checkbox which specifies whether this can be reimbursed or not. So we are going to design the same form in our app by using Lightning component so that it can be present to the user on their mobile phones, and they would be able to create the records, and also they would be able to see the total expenses they have done till date. So for this, let's start building the Lightning app. So first of all, I open developer console. Within this developer console, I'm going to launch a new application, Lightning application, and I'll give a name to that application as expense tracker, expense tracker, and submit. So there would be no space, so I provided a space. Either we can use underscore or we can remove the space. So it will create a new Lightning expense tracker app, and that's the application. So that's the app has been created. Within this, I'm going to refer for style sheet. So I'll specify link href is equal to resource rel is equal to style sheet slash link, and I create one division class is equal to container class, and I add one header, add expenses, to add a new expense. Then I'm going to create a new component. So I click on new component, and I'll give a name to that component as form. So I click on that form. So the new component within this app will be created, or a colon component. And also I want to add a style sheet to this app, and I would like to call this form.component on this within this controller within this application. So here I write BISP pack colon form, and I'll just make it self-closing tag. I want to create one style sheet for this application, so I click on style, double click on style, so you can see a expense tracker CSS has been created, and within this expense tracker I set style for heading 1, and I set background URL slash img slash icon slash credit card 32.png. So this PNG file will be stored in the repository. Repeat padding left should be 40 px, and save all. Now we are going to design the form. So I switch to form, and within this form component, first I create aura handler, and in this aura handler I'm going to create one. I give a name to this init. Name is equal to init, and I set a value. Value is equal to this, and I'll set one action here. Action is equal to, this should be go within double quotes, and action is equal to c dot do init. And this will be a self-closing tag, so I'll just make it a self-closing tag. I want to define few attributes into this component, so I create one aura. That's the way how we can define attributes. So I define one attribute, name as expense. Its type will be BISP pack dot expense underscore underscore c. It means this attribute will be extracting the value from the object. So expend underscore underscore c will be the API name of this particular object. So we can have a look to the properties of this particular object. So we have BISP pack underscore underscore expense underscore underscore c. So that's why I define here BISP pack dot expend underscore underscore c. Then I want to create one more attribute which will hold the values for creating a new record. So name is equal to new expense. Type is equal to BISP pack underscore underscore expands underscore underscore c. I want to set few default values as well. Default is equal to single quotes s object type single quotes BISP pack underscore underscore expands underscore underscore c. So I'm setting some default values to this because we have four values, five fields are there: name, amount, client, date, and reimburse. So I'm going to set some default values to that in case if user missed any value, so at least it will save some default values to that. So I'll just set the default values to it, and for that I'll set here default for expense underscore underscore c, and I set first parameter is name. So name colon blank, then BISP pack underscore underscore amount underscore underscore c, which I set this to 0, comma BISP pack underscore underscore client c. This I set to blank as a blank value. Then BISP pack underscore underscore, this time it's a date field, date underscore underscore c. So this also I want blank, or I set as a default value. And then BISP pack underscore underscore reimbursed underscore underscore c. I set it as false, and I set the values to it. And so two attributes we have defined here. We have created two attributes. Now we are going to create fields on the form. We are going to add the component on the form so that we can get the where we can get input from the user. So for that, I create two more attributes. Attribute name is equal to total, type is equal to double, and default is equal to 0.00. One more attribute I want as name is equal to expense, type is equal to double, and default I set as 0. So two more attributes we have created. Now I'm going to design a form so that I can get the input from the user. So I design a form here, form, and within this form I need to add the controls. I need to add controls into it, or I'm going to add the user interface for the same. So you can see I have added few controls. The first control here, it will holds as expense name, and label is expense name, and it holds a value as a new expense dot name. Placeholder is my expense, and it is mandatory for user to enter. I set it mandatory. Next user interface will be input number. The type is input number, and it will get the amount from the user, and whatever value is stored, whatever value we entered into this, it will be stored into BSP pack amount underscore underscore C, or it will be bound to this field. In similar way, we have three more fields, one for client, then for date, and then for reimburse. And then we have a button here, button label submit, and when we click on that button, it will call a function, it will call an action create expense, which we are going to define in our custom controller class. Apart from this, I want to create one expense counter here. I want to create one expense counter after this form, which will represent me that how much total expense I have done. So to add a comment, I'll just write here expense counter. So that's a comment, and within this expense counter, I just wanted to calculate the total expense we have done. So that's the expense counter. This counter will be displayed that how many total expense we have done, total number of records are there. So this will display the total number of records, and also, I'll just set a style here that if the total expense we have done is more than 100, it will be marked in red color. So instead of 100, I'll just switch it to 5. I'll just cut to short 5, so that if we have total number of records are 5 in our data set, in that the total number, the expense counter will be displayed in red color. Now the next I just wanted to display the total dispense record. So here it will display the total expenses we have done and how many records are there, how many total number of expenses do we have. So that's all. And now we are going to define one style sheet for the same. We are going to define one custom style sheet for this component. So I double click on style. We have form.css, and here I'm going to define few styles. So that's the style I have defined. For input checkbox, margin I set to left. For input button, margin bottom is 20px. For row, for every row, width is 100%, margin bottom is 20px. If we are using blue, the background is this one. For white is this. For user input date time. So for input date time, it will provide us a date time picker, so that the user would be able to select the date time picker. User would be able to select the date. And for input default error, if any error occurs, it will define as li. So the list it will define in the form of list item and its style is none. So that's the style I have defined. So I'll just save them all. And now we are going to create one helper class for the same. So first we need to create one form controller. So don't worry about this. Don't worry about the errors are coming. This will be working fine. Next, I need to define a custom controller class. So to define a custom controller class, I click on File, New, and Apex class. And the name of Apex class will be Expense Controller. And in this Apex controller class, first of all, I defined this should be aura enabled, and I created a function get expense function, and this function it will extract the ID, name, account, client, date, reimburse, and created date from expenses. And also there is one more function, save function, which will be used to store the data, which is used to store the value, store the expenses in the object. Then we need to create one controller class for the form which we defined here. For this form, we need to the component which we have created. We need to define one controller class. So I double click on controller, and I'm going to create a controller class to define the actions, because as you can see here, we have in form.cmp, I have defined some actions, init actions, expense actions, new expense actions. So we need to define those actions in this controller class. So in this form controller dot JavaScript, I've created function doInit, and it's a function, so it will call get expense function. And also we have created more functions to create a new expense. So this create expense function, it will extract the values, it will validate the values, and if the value is missing, if the user did not enter any amount, or if user missed amount, it will display and it will add an error message on the form to enter an expense amount. Else it will call the helper class, as you can see here in helper.createExpense. So we need to create one helper class for this form. So I just double click on this, and within this helper class we need to create this function over there. We need to create this helper.createExpense function, and which gets two parameters, components and new expense, and finally it will store the values in the object. So that's my helper class, and in this helper class I have created functions, get expense function, which will return the total, which will return the functions, which will return the value or total number of expenses to the form. In similar way, we have created here create expense function, which is called from here helper.createExpense function. So this create expense function, it will create a new record, and it will call absurd expenses. So this absurd expense, it will store the data in an object. So once we done with this, once we set all the helper class, once we set all the component class and all the expense tracker class, we'll just save it and run it. Now to test it or to check whether it's working fine or not, so I click on expense tracker.app and click on preview option. So once I load the application, you can see I'm getting the total number of expenses. So total number of expenses are 2. So here we have got 2 records in expense object. So total number of expenses are 2, and the total expenses we have done is $40. So if I open dinner, if I click on dinner, it's 20, and if I get to lunch, it's 20. So total is 40. Now if I want to create a new record, let's suppose I create a new record. So expense name is, I have done my breakfast, or I ride a taxi, and the amount is 100, and the client is BISP, and the expense date which I have done is on 9th, and it should be reimbursed, yes, and the time I took the taxi at 12:30 p.m. and when I click on submit, it will create a new record, it will insert a new record in the object, and this total expense, this particular section will get refreshed. So you can see the records has been inserted, and the total expense field has been updated to 140 and the number of expenses are 3. And if we get to our object and click on expenses, here I found we have got 3 records now. Taxi, that's the record which we inserted just now through our Lightning component app, through our app. So that's all in this. Queries, you can write to us on www.bsptrainings.com. You can subscribe my YouTube channel if you want to hear about new updates on Salesforce videos, especially on Lightning components. Till then, have a nice day. Goodbye.